I strongly believe that groups should police their own. Like, Republicans should have done something about Donald Trump. Atheists should throw rotten vegetables at Bill Maher. Canadians need to have a word with Jordan Peterson. And white men should, well, you guys have a lot of worthy targets. Good luck to you. Anyway, that's why I feel the need as a middle-aged white feminist woman to vociferously criticize Naomi Wolf. If not me, then who? If not now, then when? This isn't the first time I've talked about Naomi Wolf. Back in the year of our Lord 2019, aka the last sort of normal year, I discussed Wolf's latest book, which, like her previous books, was terribly researched and contained a bunch of garbage. Unlike her previous books, though, this one did lead to a truly jaw-dropping piece of cringe. And just for my own enjoyment, let's revisit that now.
You get sentences, as I mentioned, of penal servitude for 10 or 15 years. And I found like several dozen executions, but that was, again, only looking at the Old Bailey records and the crime tables.
Several
regionally.
Dozen executions.
Correct. And this corrects a misapprehension that is in every website, that the last man was executed for sodomy in Britain in 1835.
I don't think you're right about this. One of the cases that you look at that's salient in your report is that of Thomas Silver. It says teenagers were now convicted more often. Indeed, that year, which is 1859, 14-year-old Thomas Silver was actually executed for committing sodomy. The boy was indicted for an unnatural offence. Guilty, death recorded. This is the first time the phrase unnatural offence entered the Old Bailey records. Thomas Silver wasn't executed. Death recorded. I was really surprised by this, and I looked it up. Death recorded is what's in, I think, most of these cases that you've identified as executions. It doesn't mean that he was executed. It was a category that was created in 1823 that allowed judges to abstain from pronouncing a sentence of death on any capital convict whom they considered to be a fit subject for pardon. I don't think any of the executions you've identified here actually happened.
Well, that's a really important thing to investigate. What is your understanding of what death recorded means? Death
recorded, this is also from, I've just read you the definition of it there from the Old Bailey website. But I've got here a newspaper report about Thomas Silver and also something from the prison records that show the date of his discharge.
The prisoner was found guilty and sentence of death was recorded.
Yeah.
But the jury recommended the prisoner to mercy on account of his youth.
See, I think this is a kind of, when I found this, I didn't really know what to do with it, because I think it's quite a big problem with your argument. Also, it's the nature of the offence here. Thomas Silver committed an indecent assault on a 6-year-old boy.
Ouch. So, I just folded in on myself. I can barely even listen to that. And here is what I said before about Naomi's previous books. Her previous book, Vagina, was an absolute dumpster fire of pseudoscience, full of bullshit like, your vagina is a goddess-shaped hole. Really? Is that what a goddess is shaped like? Yikes. And that's before she gets into evolutionary psychology, which you know is a dicey subject even before someone of Naomi Wolf's intellectual merit gets involved. She preaches debunked hypotheses about the adaptive purpose of the female orgasm and declares that dopamine is a feminist chemical, for fuck's sake. And Naomi Wolf's book prior to Vagina, The Beauty Myth, was so incredibly wrong about basic facts that it's hard to understand why anyone ever agreed to publish it. As just one example, she claimed that most women have bulimia or anorexia. Most women. She claimed that 150,000 women die from anorexia every year in the United States. The actual number, somewhere around 500, not 150,000. Still way too many, but come on. Not only was that published, but Publishers, even after recognizing the mistakes in her book, allowed her to publish 2 more books, also with absolutely zero fact-checking. So yeah, Naomi Wolf isn't necessarily what one might call a critical thinker or intelligent or on speaking terms with reality. But apparently, ever since COVID-19 hit, she has gone full-on bonkers. I just had dinner in a Greek restaurant in Massachusetts, she tweeted last week, with 2 tables of new friends and without masks, and I feel like I just met an illicit lover in a shady hotel. Naughty, nice, gross. Wow, she tweeted that publicly. About 3,200 Americans died the day she tweeted that from this preventable virus. And when people reminded Wolf of that inconvenient fact, she deleted her post and apologized for taking such a selfish, unnecessary risk. Just kidding. She posted a dozen more tweets defending her actions and just straight up lying about COVID, as if we don't all know the truth by now. Here are some of her arguments. It was legal. Yes, we know. That's the problem. I've researched aerosol transmission and in a ventilated space, as this was. There is no evidence that you can infect anyone sitting 8 feet, let alone at 20 feet away from us, as the next table was. None. So by no evidence, she actually means loads and loads of evidence, since there have now been dozens of studies published that have found that COVID-19 can spread via airborne transmission beyond the usual 6 foot, 2 meter recommended distance, especially indoors, even with ventilation, which, if adequate, can reduce your risk, but not fully eliminate your risk. And in fact, if you are staying inside the same room for an extended period of time without a mask with other people, as one does when dining in a restaurant, your risk goes up so dramatically to the point that the AC running just is not going to do much to help you. According to the CDC, COVID-19 can sometimes be spread by airborne transmission. Some infections can be spread by exposure to the virus in small droplets and particles that can linger in the air for minutes to hours. These viruses may be able to infect people who are further than 6 feet away from the person who is infected, or after that person has left the space. Let's see what else she has to say. Restaurant owners and staff deserve to feed their kids. Yes, they do, which is why we should have paid everyone a living wage just to stay at home for a month back in March of 2020, because no one should have to risk their lives and their health to put food on the table. COVID is extremely age dependent and dependent on underlying conditions, my own sense of risk. Okay, yeah, because it's so extremely prevalent now, young people die from COVID all the time. Also, we don't know what the long-term effects of exposure to COVID are for those who survive, and we don't know who else you are going to give it to. Naomi Wolf is 58. As of this recording, about 50,000 Americans in her age group have died from COVID-19. That makes it the 3rd leading cause of death for that age group in the United States. So since we weren't endangering anyone else per science, you were, we supported desperate local businesses, which you could have done via takeout. We obeyed law, a bad law that should not exist, and we made personal choices re our own risk. No, you made choices that affect everyone around you. I post this as we don't live in a police state, and science today does not support withdrawal from human society for most of us. Actually, it does. I'll stop direct quoting her here because she just gets wordier and wordier as she desperately tries to lie her way out of this. But the crux is that she thinks COVID is no big deal if you're under the age of 65, and that shutting down restaurants doesn't help and only hurts the economy, and that staying home is harmful to people. Yeah, the science just does not support any of that. Lockdowns work, and if you doubt that, I invite you to compare the United States case and death numbers with literally any country that even made a passing attempt at federal regulations that might help stop the spread of this virus. On the one end of the spectrum, we have the United States, like the worst place in the world to be during a pandemic. And on the other end, we have New Zealand and Australia, both of which at some point took decisive action and today enjoy relatively risk-free maskless eating in restaurants. Isn't that nice? Wouldn't you like that for us Americans? In addition to the dozens of tweets in Wolf's main thread, she continued to try and plead her case in replies to people. Here's one example where she argues that she went to the restaurant because she needed vitamin D. Rickets is a big deal, you guys. And you get vitamin D from, being inside a restaurant. The fuck does she think the D stands for? Dolmades? No, that's not how it works. For the record, I do think spending a long time in quarantine can have negative consequences on your health for many people. But you can still go outside and get sunlight or eat foods with vitamins. The negative consequences are pretty much all psychological. It sucks not being able to see our family, hug our friends, visit loved ones who are dying in hospitals, celebrate life moments like weddings and births. But none of that sucks as bad as dying of COVID-19 or passing the virus on to someone who else dies from it or who ends up with potentially lifelong problems because of contracting it. And for the record, research shows that suicides have not noticeably increased in the past year due to quarantine. Of course, these studies were mostly done in the United States, where no state even came close to instituting an actual full lockdown. Instead, simply asking people to please stay home while allowing big box stores to continue to remain open. So maybe suicides would have increased had we actually closed everything down, like New Zealand did. Oh, wait, no. New Zealand instituted a nationwide lockdown on March 25th, 2020, and then they lifted all restrictions on June 8th of 2020 when the virus was no longer found in the country. In August of that year, New Zealand's chief coroner announced that year, up to June 30th, they had had the fewest suicides in 3 years. So no, lockdown does not appear to lead to suicides. Or rickets. What a shock that Naomi Wolf was once again extremely stupid and wrong. But hey, don't worry about it. Naomi Wolf is not letting being stupid and wrong get in the way of her plugging her book. I have a prescient, not for me to say, chapter on how infectious diseases in the 19th century in Britain led to the state grabbing control of all aspects of private life, as well as recounting the first anti-vaccination movement. Naomi, are you sure that that's what happened? Or did you get confused about what words mean again? Because that's the same book where you thought a bunch of gay men were executed for being gay, when in fact they were not executed, and in fact they were child molesters and rapists. But yeah, sure, let's all turn to that book to learn what happened in the 19th century. I'm sure it's prescient.